Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very exclusive lunchtime digital event on Facebook with Hillingdon Libraries. My name is Isha, and I work at Charville Library. Thank you for joining us today, and please do say hello in the comments. I'm delighted to welcome the incredible young adult fiction author and journalist, Andreina Cordani, who is joining us today to discuss her new book, Dead Lucky, of which I have my copy here, which was recently published just last week on the 13th of January. Hello, Andreina, and thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure. So to tell you a little bit more about Andreina Cordani, she is a young adult fiction author and journalist who has published her debut novel, The Girl Who, a year ago. Just last week, she published her new thriller book, Dead Lucky, which explores the lives of four influencers and is fast becoming one of the most exciting young adult fiction writers. Before writing her books, Andreina worked as a journalist, freelance writer, and book reviewer, and has written for leading magazines such as Cosmopolitan, Stylist, Good Housekeeping, and Reclaim. She has interviewed many amazing people about their lives, and she lives on the South Coast with her family and often swims in the sea. If you have any questions for Andreina during today's event, please write them in the comments. And if you have already started reading Dead Lucky, or you can't wait to pick it up as your next read, please let us know in the comments. And I will try very hard not to reveal any spoilers. So it's lovely to meet you, Andreina. Can you first tell us about Dead Lucky in your own words?
Okay, so Dead Lucky is about a group of characters who are influencers on a streaming platform loosely based on YouTube with a bit of TikTok thrown in called PlayMii. And they all became mega famous in the space of 3 years. So they're sort of 18, 19 years old now, and they're feeling the pressure. But then one of them is murdered on camera on the first page, and the killer is wearing a mask. Nobody knows who it is, but whoever it is has uploaded the murder to the victim's streaming platform. And so now the whole world has gone crazy, kind of reacting to the murder, figuring out what the truth is, flinging about blame everywhere. And in the middle of it all is my character, Maxine, who is one of the other influencers, who somehow gets landed with the task of trying to track down this file of secrets that Zav, the victim, was holding on other influencers before the killer can strike again.
Yes, that's right. And one is very dramatic. It kind of dives straight into the action and into this horrible murder that's happened during a live stream. Why did you choose to open the story in this way with this really shocking and tragic incident?
I think basically, I mean, I read a classic crime called Dorothy L. Sayers' Cozy Mystery a couple of weeks ago, and they didn't discover the body until page 125. But I think I think contemporary audiences prefer them, if it's going to be a murder mystery, they do prefer it to be a little bit more upfront. And I put mine literally in the first line of the book. I think basically it was the first thing I wrote when I started writing the book, and it came really naturally. And it, like, the first line just sort of gave me a bit of a shiver. So I thought I'll keep it there, and hopefully it'll give other people a shiver as well.
Yeah, it certainly did for me. And it was great because it sort of like dove straight into it and it made me want to read on. It was really exciting to start the book. To take a quote from the book, at one point you write, fans were horrified, fascinated by this video that goes viral online on social media, and that's of the murder of one of the characters. What do your choice of words, so that oxymoron, horrified, fascinated, what do you think that suggests about the way that content is shared online today? Because we've seen it with quite a few things, like very sort of graphic images are shared online on the news every day. So Yeah, how do you think, what do you think this says about the way things are shared online today?
I think, I mean, horror and fascination I don't see as completely contradictory. I think, you know, we are fascinated by the things that we fear. And, you know, especially when we are separated from it by a screen. And I think that's the important thing, that the screen sort of cushions us and makes it less real for us. But obviously, you know, it's still horrific that someone's been murdered on camera. But at the same time, I don't know, like Zav, my character, is part of this ongoing kind of reality show, really, of his own making, where he's just he's pushing the envelope and being more and more controversial. So in a way, a lot of people aren't massively surprised by what happened because he lived shockingly, and so they're not surprised that he's died shockingly. But yeah, I think, yeah, I did, like when I was writing it, worry that like something like this would happen. Like the more I read about influencers, the more I thought, God, what if something like this happens before I publish the book, and then my book looks horrible and crass, and I have to withdraw it and stop writing it. But thank God that hasn't happened. But it is something that could, because we are sort of getting more, like, we're covering so much of our life on camera now, so it's hardly surprising if something shocking like that does eventually happen, because, you know, we just keep a record of so many things in our lives now, even if we're not influencers.
Absolutely, yeah. And as you said, yeah, thankfully nothing like that has happened as yet. But you think, yeah, thank God. But as you said, like with things like trolling and online abuse which is such a big issue, and one of the worst issues with social media, is one of those things that, you know, that could be the worst case scenario, isn't it? That an influencer could experience, or anyone in the public eye.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you explore, what I loved about this book as well is that you explore really topical themes, which I think are so relevant at the moment, and they're all interconnected. So, you know, it's a story about influencers who are on social media and on the most popular social media platforms. You sort of explore how that has an impact on their mental health and how they're perceived publicly. And you also explore the impact of cancel culture as well, which is a big thing. And, you know, we see that through the way some of the influencer characters are trolled and they're vilified. What message are you hoping to get across to young readers about cancel culture?
I don't know if I particularly am going to give a message. I think what I like to do is, and I try and do this with journalism as well, and it's kind of harder because the magazine always has a point of view, but I just like to show people what it's like, and then it's up to them to kind of get the message they want out of it. You know, I've got my opinions, but to be honest, I don't think the book is like just a reflection. It's not a reflection of my opinions, really. It's more, like you said, an exploration of it. And I let the reader decide. I think with cancel culture, with Maxine, my main character, who ends up doing the sleuthing, spends a lot of the book worrying about what people think. Like, she starts off and she's in a bit of a meltdown. She's been producing videos every day for the last 3 years. She's exhausted. And she's worried about putting a foot wrong and trashing everything that she's worked for. And she's, you know, 18 years old. She doesn't know everything. She hasn't learned everything, but somehow she's expected to navigate this environment that's quite, you know, she hasn't learned. There's no way we can all be 18 years old and know everything there is to know about every culture, every diversity, every peculiarity. Like, well, it's just really hard to know that. But she could so easily ruin her career by doing something wrong. So she's scared of that the whole time. And it kind of limits her from finding the truth. And it's only really at the end, when she becomes more confident in herself and just following, you know, her own instincts and doing the right thing, that she kind of gets closer to the truth and figures out what it is. So I do think, personally, cancel culture can be very inhibiting, but I also think there are probably some people who should just shut up.
Yeah, yeah, true. Cases of which we've seen very recently show that through the character of Maxine, that pressure that these young people, these teenagers feel about being in the public eye, being so famous online and having all these fans, this massive fan base, and that fear they have of being cancelled. And like, this is like a massive fear for people these days of being cancelled and kind of then having your fame just totally thrown out the window. And I also like the fact that you also in the book show the impact that influence life has on mental health, of being famous. And why was this an important theme for you to explore in this book?
I think, again, like the thing that strikes me about influencers, having watched it, you know, I haven't been watching it as a consumer really. I've been watching it out of sheer curiosity of like, you know, how does this life work? What is it like? And I just see people who started doing this without, nobody really knew what this thing was a few years ago. You know, even, I know we've had YouTubers for a while, but even like TikTok has it's only been around a couple of years. People started creating on there without really, just because there's self-expression and creativity, and all of a sudden they're incredibly successful. They're having brands, you know, pushing things at them. They're expected to be spokesperson for this and a role model for that, and they're still figuring out who they are, and then they're supposed to be themselves on camera 24/7. Like my character Maxine is really into leopard print, and she used to wear a lot of leopard print, and so now everyone buys a leopard print, and you know, she's expected to wear it in public all the time, and she's starting to think, maybe I don't want to wear leopard print all the time. And that's a sort of very trivial way of looking at it, obviously, but that is the thing. Like when you are a teenager and in your 20s as well, I still didn't have my identity figured out, to be honest. I still don't have my identity figured out. Like, especially in your teenage years, when you're really figuring out, who am I, what do I stand for, what do I represent, and then to go through that with millions of people watching, it's enormous pressure. And that's kind of what I found really interesting.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And did you always want to write a book about influences that fascinated you so much? And are your characters based on real influences?
Do I want to be sued?
Probably not. No.
Well,
there is
based on real influences. But I'll tell you the story about how I came to sort of become interested in it. Really was I was writing The Girl Who, my first book, and there's one character in it called Ellie, and I started writing The Girl Who way back in the midst of time. And the idea was that Leah, my main character, is famous because, well, she's well known because she witnessed a horrible murder of her mother and sister when she was younger, and she was really traumatized by it. But then the press kind of elevated her to this, you know, national hero kind of level because she's so brave and courageous. And then 10 years on, she's kind of again trying to figure out who she is. But she doesn't really want to be that famous. Whereas Ellie, the other character, wanted to be famous and is quite an attention seeker, and she's quite, you know, dramatic, and she loves a bit of drama. She loves throwing glitter all everywhere. And I wanted her to be driving towards becoming famous. I wanted her to kind of want like some way of her wanting to be famous. And I was struggling for ages. And then, you know, I was struggling with it back in sort of 2012, 2013, something like that. And like one of the young people on a creative writing course said, "Oh, make her a blogger." And I'm like, no, she doesn't write. She's not a writer. That's another one of the things, is like the contrast between the characters. One of them is very bookish and one isn't. And then I was on the beach in sandbanks near where I live, and there was this guy on the beach, really cool looking guy, looked very relaxed, looked like he'd been on holiday half his life, very tanned, sort of dreads, very cool. And then, but the weird thing was that these 10-year-olds kept coming up to him. And and then instead of saying hello strange 10-year-olds, he was like chatting to them and doing selfies with them and talking to their parents. And then finally I overheard him explaining to some kind of bemused grandfather that yes, I've got my own YouTube channel and it's really popular and this is why everyone's looking at me. And I was like, oh yeah, this is the thing. So Ellie, my character, became an aspiring YouTuber, and then I invented the character of Maxine when I was writing The Girl Who as a kind of successful person that Ellie wanted to collab with. And so then after that, I was just like, oh no, I just make Maxine solve a crime. And that's kind of where it came from.
Oh, great. Thank you. And I actually have some questions from our creative writing group, our teen creative writing group, with Hillingdon Libraries that were passed on to me by my colleague Delina. So they have some questions for you as aspiring writers themselves. So the first question from them is, what do your stories start as? What is the first idea? And how do you find someone to publish your work?
Oh, that's kind of two questions, really. The first one is the stories kind of start out. I always think stories start with two ideas. So you have your one idea, which for me, like, maybe idea one is, what if Maxine has to solve a mystery because she's famous for being stupid and or ditzy, and that would be quite interesting. And the second really was, what if somebody murders someone on camera and uploads it? What would happen to the world if that happened? And that was the two sort of ideas at the beginning of Dead Lucky. I always think that there's one idea which is your kind of like aha idea, like being murdered on camera is like, whoa. And then the second idea is like an interesting thing that just puts something in the mix. So like with The Girl Who, Leah, my I was like, what would it like to be growing up with being perceived as a famous victim the whole time, and everyone tiptoeing around you, and everyone thinking you're a lovely saint because you've been through this trauma and you survived. What would that be like? So that was the idea number one. But idea number two was, what if you had a stepsister that wants to grab all the attention? And once you mix those two ideas together, it's sort of, the characters then come out and it starts to make a story. So for me, like, if you have an idea in your head about, I don't know, like, what if dragons were real in modern Britain? And then the second idea would be, and what if there was a girl who was running away from her unhappy stepfamily? I don't know, but these are two ideas. So you've got an emotional idea and a concept idea, and you put them together, and that sort of creates a magical thing where your brain starts working and thinking of a story. The second part of the question was, how do you go about getting published?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
That's always a long story. I mean, it's not the easiest road, and there are obviously various different paths to it now, because you can also self-publish, and lots of people do very well with that. I'm conventionally published with a traditional kind of publishing company. And what you do generally is you write your book, and you write it, and you write it, and you write it, and you write it. And you keep changing and tweaking as much as you can until it's hard to say you're happy with it, because you never are, but until you think it's ready for someone else to look at it. And then you share it with a friend or a reading buddy or something like that. And once they've looked at it and you've sort of discussed it and talked through all your problems and everything, then you perfect it, and then you start sending it to agents. Literary agents are mysterious beasties that kind of matchmake you with a publisher. So you basically have to find the right literary agent, which is a long drawn out process. If you can hear, like J.K. Rowling sent her, so she's got hundreds of rejection letters. Everyone successful. I think Stephen King even has got hundreds of. Lee Child certainly has hundreds of rejection letters. And then eventually, what happens is your book lands on the desk of somebody who wants your book, and it's nothing personal. Like, this is the thing with the rejection. It's really nothing personal. It's just that, you know, the connection between a book and a reader is like such a mystical thing. And, you know, some people will love a book and other people will hate it, and so you just need to find the agent that loves your book, or that's going to love your book, and you do that by googling a lot and reading about interviews with agents about the sort of thing they like. There's also events you can go to where you can meet agents and have a one-to-one and things like that. So there's lots of stuff out there. For younger people, it probably is tough because some of these things cost money, but Google is your friend with finding an agent. And then the agent will then sell your story to a publisher, and then the publisher will then take that book and try and sell your book to booksellers who were, you know, people who work in bookshops, and Amazon and Waterstones and WH Smith, etc. And then those people will try and sell your book to readers. So it's actually ridiculously long and convoluted. So I can see why people do self-publish, because it's much easier.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, thank you. That's really helpful. And the other question from the group they had for you was, what genre do you think matches your style, your personality best?
That's a tricky one, because I can't commit. So I really want to write comedy, and I really want to write fantasy, and I really want to write sci-fi, and I really love writing thrillers. So I can never commit to one genre, and I don't want to ever say one is just for me. But whatever it is, I think every single story needs to have humor in it. So if you look at the most successful films in history, you know, I'm sort of going back a little bit to my childhood now and looking at films like the Star Wars trilogy and Indiana Jones and that kind of thing. Every single one of those films is drama, funny bit, drama. And I think, you know, you have to have funny bits in there. And I think that's, as whatever I write, it's going to have some kind of humor in it, even if it's dry, slightly sarcastic humor.
Oh, brilliant. And another question we have from them is, how has your writing changed since you published your books?
That's a really interesting question, because I actually tried to change my writing. I tried to change the way I write to make myself faster and more efficient, and plan in advance and everything. And I still end up doing it the same way, which is writing a bit and then going back and reading what I wrote the day before and rubbing it in, editing it, and then writing the original. And it's very slow and laborious, but it seems to be the only way I can work. But the thing is, when you do write a second book and you've got a publisher waiting for that second book and a deadline, it does change your approach. And obviously it's nice because you know that there's someone there who thinks your writing is good enough. So it gives you that kind of courage to sort of have a bit of faith in yourself. But at the other hand, you've got that little voice saying, well, what if I do it wrong this time and her faith is misplaced? And then so you do end up writing the second book isn't as easy as you think it's going to be. But I don't know if my writing has actually changed.
And the last question from the group is, what advice do you have for young writers?
I think the most important thing, and this is a thing it took me way too long to learn, is write. So I put it off for years because I thought I didn't have enough experience, or I wasn't, or I hadn't had any adventures, or all of this stuff, and I put it off. And actually, the best thing you can do is write absolute tosh. Just write. Doesn't matter if it's really, really rubbish, because the next thing you write after that will be slightly better, and then the next thing will be slightly better. So now I feel like I'm making up for all those years I wasted by my first draft being really, really rubbish. The other thing really that's so important, and I think your creative writing group has probably got this nailed already, is that you have to find other people to share your work with. That's really important. I had this real complex about you can't share your work unless it's absolutely perfect. And so I sat on it and squirreled away in secret and didn't tell anyone what I was writing. And I think nowadays people have a very different approach, which is much better, because other people are so supportive, and sometimes you can sit there and just talk to them about, or chat to them online or whatever, about your work. Oh, I've got this problem because I need her to get to the railway station by this time, but her car's broken down. You go, oh yeah, the bike in the garden shed. And you just think, it makes you think more when you're talking to people, even if they don't come up with a solution for you.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. That's really useful advice for young writers in the creative writing group. And yeah, thank you to the writing group as well for passing on those
thank you so much.
But yeah, thank you for giving them such wonderful answers. We have a couple of people who have said hello. So there's a hello from Nathan and Karen, who asked, well, Karen asked, I'd like to know which books you are enjoying lately.
Gosh, right, let me think. And my brain's just gone completely blank, and I do nothing but write about books that I've enjoyed lately. Okay, the most recent book that I had that has completely blown me away was, I read it over Christmas, and it was The Gilded Ones by Andreina Cordani, which is a YA fantasy, and it's about girls who are they kind of it's a very sexist society where girls are repressed, and they on the particular day of a ritual, teenage girls are taken to the village and they're cut, and if their blood bleeds gold, then they're cast out or they're murdered. And this particular girl, her blood bleeds gold on the day, and she ends up joining this group of warriors. And just saying that, though, it's just the way the writing and the way the world was built. I just was so swept away by it, and I just loved all the characters and just really desperately wanted to know what happened next. And I haven't read a good old school frolicking fantasy adventure for ages, so definitely recommend that one.
Fantastic, thank you. And Nathan asked, do you have any tips on the next big trends in young adult fiction? So are there any trends that are kind of emerging in young adult fiction?
I don't really know. I mean, I do think, I'd like to think that crime fiction is growing and it's on the up. And I think always with young adult fiction, something that's that talks about the society we're living in, because young adults are trying to make sense of the world around them. There's so many conversations, so many issues going on at the moment, so much controversy, and they're really interested in books that tackle that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be directly tackling that. So, it can be, told via fantasy or fairy retelling or whatever, but anything that's sort of that people are talking about and getting excited about in real life is a topic that young adults want to read about, I think.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And are you working on anything at the moment? Or is there anything that you are planning to write about in your future books?
So I've got so many ideas cooking up at the moment. When you're between books and you go, oh, this thing, this idea, and then you just keep following it like squirrel. So I've got lots of ideas. One thing I'm quite interested in is looking at. I've been reading a lot about QAnon, and I don't mean I'm going to write a book about QAnon necessarily, but that thing where people believe what they want to believe, and then they will just find more little scraps of factoids and put them together and make them into something fictitious. That really interests me. So whatever I write, I think it's going to have that sort of thing involved in it in the future. Just this sort of complete, like how easy it is to be swept up in something like that. It's just really interesting. So that might be one thing that I'll be tackling.
Okay. Oh, that's really interesting, and especially because like this is QAnon is something we're hearing more and more about, and obviously it's a year ago since the
Storming of the
attack on the
Capitol.
Capitol in the US. Yeah. So yeah, that would be. I'd be looking forward to that one. Definitely.
Well, I'd be
Yeah.
in my brain is doing so.
Yeah, it's just waiting to come out. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Andreina. I'm afraid we've run out of time for today, which is such a shame. The time's just sort of flown by. There's so many other things to ask you, but thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time to be with us. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and thank you for answering all of our questions. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. Oh, and very quickly, where can people pick up a copy of Dead Lucky?
Available at all good bookshops. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. And we also do have a copy available to borrow in Hillingdon libraries. So if you're interested in borrowing the book, we have it here at the library. So again, thank you so much, everybody, and thank you, Andreina. We wish you all the best with the publication of your new book. And the recording of the session will be available on Facebook, on our Facebook page. So that's Hillingdon Library's Facebook page. And thank you again, and have a lovely day.
Thank you. You too. All the best. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.